Lieutenant General Retired Majid Ehsan. Lieutenant General Majid Ehsan is a retired 3-star general of the Pakistan Army with over 35 years of distinguished service, having varied command, staff, and instructional assignments. As a Lieutenant General, he has been President of National Defence University and Commander 4 Corps Lahore. He holds multiple advanced degrees in defense and strategic studies from Pakistan and Egypt. I would request President IPRI to please come on the stage and deliver his welcome remarks.
Ambassador Inamul Haq, Chairman, Board of Governors, IPRI, Mr. Shahriyar Umar, CEO, Petroleum Institute of Pakistan, Mr. Mohammad Amir Salim, Executive Director, PetroServe OGDCL, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and very warm welcome to Islamabad Policy Research Institute. Ladies and gentlemen, the book titled Pakistan's Energy Sector Need for Strategic and Commercial Storage, Oil and Gas is a collaborative study undertaken by Islamabad Policy Research Institute and Petroleum Institute of Pakistan through active support and input from all important stakeholders of oil and gas sector. It includes Atak Refinery Limited, Ministry of Energy, Fauji Oil Terminal and Distribution Company, Oil Companies Advisory Council, OGDCL, Oil and Gas Regulatory Authority, Pakistan State Oil, and Sui Southern Gas Company Limited. Being a study that included technical and development aspects of oil and gas sector, it would not have been attained fruition without active help and support of all important stakeholders, for which I am personally grateful and thankful. Strategic storage of oil and gas is a capability that ensures energy security of a country, both in peace as well as in crisis situations like wars and geopolitical upheavals. Cognizant of this need, all countries, including oil exporting countries, make attempts to make their energy supplies resilient to external shocks through strategic storages. In our neighborhood, India has developed a strategic commercial storage capacity of 87 days. Though OGRA Ordinance of 2002 clearly defines strategic petroleum storage as a fuel reserves in the event of public emergency and urges the federal government to establish and maintain a strategic petroleum reserve, still Pakistan does not maintain this capacity. The Federal War Book of 1983 also requires the government to keep strategic reserves of 45 days in the country's demand at national level. And this need for strategic storage was further emphasized in a special study conducted by OGRA in 2022 on the directions of Cabinet Committee of Energy, and it was duly supported by Joint Staffs Headquarters. The strategic storage being a costly undertaking, in addition to technical challenges of the gas storage, has not materialized so far in the manner recommended by the OGRA study also. In this study, our team has undertaken elaborate efforts to map out the current commercial storage as well as the refining capacities to sketch out a pragmatic roadmap for enhancing energy security through improvements of oil and gas logistics, including port handling and associated oil and gas transmission infrastructure. There is a need for a holistic and incremental approach to achieve the desired end of strategic storages and energy security. I am glad that the research team has preferred some very practicable steps to the roadmap to develop and the above capacity and balancing the realities of national economy and the imperatives of energy security. It's a humble first step towards realizing our energy security potential, and even if few of the recommendations see the light of the day, the research endeavor would have fulfilled its desired aim. In the end, I would like to felicitate the research team of IPRI as well as Petroleum Institute of Pakistan for a very assiduous and painstaking research on a difficult yet important topic It took about 1.5 years for this team to complete this short study. Thank you very much.
Thank you, President. I would now request Brigadier Retired Dr. Rashid Wali Janjua, who was heading this team from IPRI's side, to share his views on the book. But before calling him on the podium, please allow me to introduce him. Dr. Rashid Wali Janjua is currently serving as Director Research and Analysis at IPRI. He is a graduate of Canadian Forces College, holding a master's degree in Security and Defense Management from Royal Military College, Kingston, Ontario. Besides a civil engineering degree, Dr. Janjua holds a PhD in Peace and Conflict Studies from NUST. He has been on the board of directors of Murray Petroleum from 2016 to 2019. Sir, please take the podium.
Thank you, Mariam. Ambassador Inam, Chairman IPRI Board of Governors, Lieutenant General Naeem Lodi, President IPRI, CEO Petroleum Institute of Pakistan, Shahryar Saab, Amir Salim Saab representing OGDCL, and distinguished visitors. IPRI President just mentioned that it's a humble first step and a roadmap towards strategic storages. So I, on the spur of the moment, just remembered Winston Churchill. Somebody spoke in glowing terms and about one of his political adversaries, and then said that he's a very modest man. Then back came the reply from Churchill that yes, a very modest man, but a lot to be modest about. So I'm aware of all my limitations standing here in front of these luminaries like Mr. Shahryar, Amir Saab, and Sami Saab also representing upstream oil marketing company. My only claim to fame was a 3 years stint on the Mardi's Board of Governors, and that instinct led to an instant connection on an informal meeting with Mr. Shahryar in one of the energy conferences. And this idea of this research germinated out of that informal interaction. And then I realized that this is something very, very important. We have done in dribs and drabs, in bits and pieces, some research, some guidelines here and there, but no institutionalized and proper coherent narrative existed. And there was a definite need. So once we collaborated with the Petroleum Institute of Pakistan, we were indeed very fortunate because we brought our national security subjects expertise, and they brought together their niche expertise of petroleum sector. And we came up with this product, which by no means we don't make any pretensions of this being the final word. In fact, some other studies may emanate out of these, and this is how we have packaged our recommendations. And most importantly, the recommendations pertain to upgradation, improvement of the existing port infrastructure, strategic storages, refining scene, so that unless this holistic scheme of interconnected elements is separated and addressed independently by the relevant ministries, nothing will come together. And I was quite bemused once I was browsing through this study yesterday. I found out that the refining, which is very, very essential for strategic storages if we have to have a capability. The government priority was to upgrade it and bring the fuel to Euro 5 standards for pollution control purposes also. But that came a cropper because of the government's fiscal limitation, and that $6 billion upgradation of refineries was put on hold. So I said that there's a lot of disconnect between what we do as researchers and what the government does because of its limitations. But this, as President very correctly pointed out, is a roadmap. And this roadmap would give the policymakers' idea to put into practice or to initiate some other studies. Like one of the studies that we have recommended in this study is about establishment of an entity which should manage our strategic storages and which should be either working in public-private mode, which should maintain these storages on behalf of the government, rotate those storages, use them commercially, but keep them as a reserve, as a buffer stock to tide over the emergency situations. Then we also have certain other recommendations. We'll just give a short tour de horizon on a slide format so that we are all focused before the experts, the real experts, come and say their piece. All right, so why need? The basic need is resilience for supply disruptions, and nothing highlights better than this opportune moment, because opportune or perhaps not so opportune, because this Iran and Israel war is a stark reminder of the volatility of price fluctuations possibility, which we have started experiencing, by the way. India maintains 87 days stat reserves pointed out by the president, and yes, they are going to 120 days now as per their new strategic plan. By 2030, they are planning to have it by 120 days. Our oil marketing and distribution network that is run by private sector needs to be properly incentivized, because it has a lot of flexibility and strength to create stat reserves, especially in the government sector. During this research, we resorted to primary and secondary sources, all that we could lay our hands on. And primary focus was on interviews of oil and gas experts and visits to all the oil terminals. These were the partners who helped us fructify our conclusions and recommendations, both representing upstream and downstream oil and gas sector. So stat storage is about deterring an emergency-like situation, like the recent war is the apt example. Commercial storages are meant to ensure uninterrupted supply. Supply chain disruption has to be avoided, and government has a policy of 20-day storage mandated by OGRA for OMCs to maintain such a reserve. Our current capacity for petroleum products is 2.5 metric billion tons, and the crude oil 0.9 metric million tons. The debate over stat and commercial storages is an effort directed towards making Pakistan an energy secure country. That is the bottom line. The strategic and commercial storages refer to different domains when it comes to usage, but as far as the benefit is concerned, both are essential for country's defense. A short overview of Pakistan's natural gas and oil reserves. Pakistan's natural gas reserves are 18.3 TCF. In South Asia, Pakistan is the second largest natural gas, and our prospecting geography is gas-based, not oil-based. That needs to be remembered. Crude oil reserves wise, Pakistan has 243 million barrels. Overview of the whole sector. Upstream sector, we have exploration and production companies. OGDCL remains the primus inter pares, first amongst the equals. Refineries, we have around 6, combined capacity 22.5 million tons per year. Parco is the largest factory in Pakistan, refinery in Pakistan. Then the OMCs, 34 of those. PSO is the largest OMC. Parco Pakistan Limited is the second largest OMC. Gas downstream sector is being taken care by Sui Southern Gas, and the northern part of Pakistan is covered by Sui Northern Gas. Now, coming out to the big question, should Pakistan opt for strategic storages? Well, cost-wise, it might appear quite prohibitive, So that is why we have so far not been able to achieve this capability. But necessity-wise, yes. 9 to 10 million tons of crude is refined by our refineries, and the rest 10 to 12 is imported. Now, building of strategic storages requires huge finances. So I think that was the largest single inhibiting factor, despite all those guidelines in the federal war book, OGRA guidelines, and JS headquarters willingness. It has not been brought to fruition so far. An allusion to federal war book I just mentioned. In 2022, in a study, again, OGRA recommended the construction of large-scale oil and storage facilities. Supported by GS headquarters, Ministry of Defense, citing the need to build these reserves underground to protect them from terrorist attacks or enemy aerial bombardment. Now, this is just a theoretical comparison between commercial and strategic storages. Commercial storages are privately owned, strategic storages have to be owned and managed by the government and mandated agencies. So is the case in USA, China, India. The purpose is primarily for regular business operations in case of commercial storages. In case of strategic, it is to address the emergencies or supply disruptions. Now, this is readily available to the companies for the commercial purposes. This is held off the market in storage, only released during specific circumstances. Sizes of commercial entities can vary as per the commercial requirements. Strategic storages traditionally are large in scale. In case of India, it is on the east and western coast along Visakhapatnam, in those geographical caverns. The funding part, important thing to note is that in case of strategic storages, it has to be funded by the government budgets. An overview of what the rest of the world holds. Now, Australia holds 51 days, Japan 193, South Korea 247, New Zealand 92, France 113, and Canada, Mexico, Norway, United States being net exporters. But by the way, when we say net exporters, perhaps United States, countries like them do not want to actually share with us also where they are holding their stat reserves. Another international comparison. This is the commercial capacity 97 MMT United States. Strategic, it is net exporter, not shared the data. Case of China, 40 to 50 days, and 10 BCM in case of gas. Stat, 52, 55.2, and 24.5 billion cubic meters. India, 87 days, and they are still expanding. As I said, by 2030, they have a plan of going up to 120 days. Now, coming over to recommendations. Oil storages. So we recommend that the country must have a dedicated entity to build crude oil storages. It can be funded private and public partnership wise. It should hold the storages and it should be responsible for the commercial operations, turning over for commercial usages from time to time. The storage should be well spread. A geographical survey should be carried out. A proper study should be conducted to identify the locations where these should be located, preferably along the coast and well distributed. Then this is something very important. Then removal of restrictions on construction and expansion at the current port areas also need to be removed to improve its existing capacity. So far, there is a ban by the government, which is inhibiting the ability to expand. Port infrastructure. There is a dire need of upgradation and modernization of port infrastructure, both at Port Qasim as well as KPT. There is no night navigation facility at Port Qasim, which needs to be added. Dredging capacity needs to be added. New jetty is required at Port Qasim. Transportation and connectivity wise, we need investment in pipelines to improve efficiency, safety, and connectivity. The white oil pipeline from Machike to northern consumption centers is a dire need. Then a pipeline linking KPT and Port Qasim to increase the flexibility and security of supply and reduce vessel turnaround times at ports is essential. Now, this is very important. Hub area needs to be developed as an oil port and storage locations. And we are also recommending single point mooring systems there to reduce the vessel congestion and give more flexibility for berthing vessels. As you can see, these pipelines planned, and there's a Taru Jabba Macheki pipeline. So incidentally, all of them are on the hold. So this says a lot about our priorities, fiscal space and all. But these are absolutely essential. Unless we do this, we don't unclog our arteries and strategic storages and other refineries part, upgradation of refineries, storages, pipelines. These are all interconnected things. Unless we do one, we cannot do another. Lastly, the gas storage. Now, remember that oil storage is relatively easier compared to the gas storage. So in Pakistan, a study by, I think, one of the consultants hired by the government of Pakistan through Asian Development Bank financing had recommended in Badin area, Bukhari field it was called. So that was a depleted area. So they recommended that we can dig wells and we can perhaps make storages. But gas storage, remember, is a very difficult thing. In this study, we are recommending that LNG storages at Port Qasim should be developed by building land-based gas terminal to overcome the reliance on floating regasifying ship systems. Then we recommend that a new jetty and pipelines in coastal areas of Pakistan, near Gwadar as well as Hub. Lastly, the PSGPL, which is a government-owned entity, which holds our gas and its distribution. The third-party access arrangement to encourage private sector's participation in LNG sector. So LNG sector, private sector should be permitted through their own pipelines to apply, and if there is excess, they should be allowed. At the moment, that lies unutilized. So that's all from my side. So I thought this should be a good recap and a short tour de horizon before Shahryar Umar comes and says his piece. So thank you so much.
Thank you, sir, for enlightening us. I would now request Mr. Shahryar Umar, who is a valued partner with IPRI from Petroleum Institute of Pakistan in this research, to share his reflection and thoughts on the book. Shahryar Umar is the Chief Executive Officer of Petroleum Institute of Pakistan. He brings extensive global management experience in Asia and North America across multiple industries and disciplines, with companies like Pakistan State Oil, Coca-Cola, Nestle, and Citibank. Mr. Umar has managed some of the largest and best-known brands in the world, including Coca-Cola, Citibank Visa, and Nescafe. Sir, please.
Assalamu alaikum. Excellencies, colleagues from the industry, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all very much for coming here. I'm really happy that the two largest industry players are represented here in PSO and OGDCL because obviously they are absolutely critical to the industry in Pakistan. Just a quick comment on Brigadier Janjua. I think he's been more modest than he should be because in my 2 years plus of interacting with him, I never got the sense that he didn't know anything about the energy industry. He knows a lot, and in fact, more than a lot of people in the energy industry that I've interacted with. So it's been an absolute pleasure working with him and with his team, and I'm really glad for the opportunity, Brigadier Saab.
And I look forward to, as he said, researchers flowing from this, because this is more of a bigger picture, and I think much more needs to be done. So since he has, quite ably gone through all of the details and the numbers, I would like to talk more about the overall situation in the energy industry in Pakistan, with particular reference to the oil and gas. So, as you know, we are energy deficient, and we import a lot of energy in the form of oil as well as gas now in the last 5 or 6 years, or 7 years now, since we started importing LNG. And I think the most critical issue, other than just the security, is obviously the economy itself, because energy is the lifeblood of the economy. If the energy sector suffers or is not growing as it should or is not as efficient as it should be, then the economy will suffer. And at the end of the day, a strong economy is probably the biggest security that we can have. So if we have a strong and growing economy, that gives a lot of ease to a lot of the other areas that we can invest in. Now, when I was at PSO, I joined in 2016. Pretty much since that time, so it's been about 9 years, we've been having this discussion about strategic storages within the industry, and particularly with the Ministry of Defense as well. So the point of view of the MOD has always been that it is the responsibility of the Ministry of Energy or Petroleum to ensure that there are strategic storages. The ministry then comes to the oil marketing companies and says, you have to invest. So this has been going round and round and round for the last 9 or 10 years in terms of who is actually going to put the money into this. Because it's not a small ask. So there is a capital expenditure involved, maybe of a few $1 billion, depending on how much storage we initially build. And then there is a huge operating expense involved in filling those storages and managing those storages, because this is dynamic storage. You can't just put it in there and wait for years to, you have to use those stocks. Wherever in the world there are strategic storages, the government has a special entity that manages them. They fill them when the prices are lower, and they release them to their refineries, and it's mostly all crude oil storage. They release them to their refineries, for production purposes, and they keep refilling depending on what it is. So there are a lot of challenges in Pakistan, not just financial, though that is a huge challenge, but the other challenge is who does this? And because of the kind of bureaucracies we have, and because of the kind of rules and regulations we have for procurement, which is a big barrier to a lot of our public sector entities, in terms of how efficient they could be if they did not have to follow these rules, particularly in these commodity trading type of environments. So it needs a lot of relaxation in other systems besides just the financial outlay involved. So I think as part of the ongoing discussions that we will have in partnership with IPRI, is to start dialogue with some of these other entities, whether it's the ministries or with the PPRA, regarding PPRA guidelines as to how to make them much more flexible for certain industries. Because we are at a complete disadvantage, for example, at PSO, because they have to tender for their petroleum products. And in a volatile commodity market, it is not the most efficient way to buy. So PSO should have the flexibility to buy when it's low and stock up, and use those stocks when the prices are going up. But that is not possible because of the PPRA regulation. So a lot needs to be done on that side, and I hope that as we roll this study out into the various stakeholders, we are able to start creating that momentum along with Brigadier Saab and his team, and hopefully the Ministry of Defense as well, because the importance of this cannot be understated. So we would like to hopefully partner with these 2 or 3 key stakeholders and help build that momentum so we are able to achieve this for Pakistan. Because at the end of the day, yes, there's some money involved, but I don't think that this would be money ill spent if we spent in developing this type of security for our energy needs. So that's my point of view, and I'm looking forward to sort of building on these researches with IPRI and his team. And thank you all again very much. And if there's anything that the IPRI team needs from PIP in terms of being able to partner with them and go and present these to other stakeholders, we would be very happy to do that. And thank you all very much.
Thank you so much, sir. I would now request Mohammad Amir Salim to share his comments on the book. Mohammad Amir Salim currently serves as Executive Director, PetroServe at OGDCL. He is also serving as Non-Executive Director on the board of Murray Petroleum Company Limited. With over 26 years of experience in oil and gas industry, Mr. Salim began his career with Slumberger Sadco Forex in 1996 and has since served in various international assignments across Singapore, Vietnam, Thailand, Indonesia, and the UAE. Sir, please take the roster.
Assalamualaikum. Thank you for the introduction, Excellencies, General Majid Saab and Brigadier Saab. Thank you very much for the invite, and Assalamualaikum to everybody. So, in terms of somebody who's going to speak the last, it's always a bit of a challenge that how are you going to keep the audience, interested in the conversation. So I think in terms of the just few points that I want to mention before I make my own comments. So some of the comments I will make here may not necessarily represent OGDCL, as they may be my own. In terms of the discussion today, so I would just like to a little bit split on the two parts. In terms of the book, I think a very good presentation has been given by the Brigadier Saab, where he already pointed out the main features, the main theme of the book. So I will not try to dwell too much on that part. So let me provide you on the macro level of what's happening globally. Also, I think as we are gathered here and we are talking about this subject, the Iran-Israel conflict is ongoing. The Ukraine war is ongoing for more than 3 years now, probably coming to 4 years now. So how it is actually impacting the whole scenario. So on the, couple of years ago, probably it was 2 years ago, so I was attending one of the sessions where the Saudi Aramco CEO discussed about the macroeconomic situation that's in the, on a global perspective. So what he mentioned in that conversation that this was just after the post-COVID era. So if you just look at, so there was a very severe dip in terms of the oil and gas demand across the globe. So there was a supply glut. I think some of you would remember that there were tankers, which were basically full, and there were no buyers. And at some point in time, the oil was also going in negative. So I think he mentioned that there was a red flashing light which was in blinking for the last 10 years in terms of how the whole macroeconomic situation is being handled. And why I'm mentioning this thing, because Pakistan is a very small energy player when you look at from the global perspective, but we are highly energy dependent, importing almost 80% of our energy needs. So this is about 2022, 2023. So the global investments in the oil and gas industry fell from $700 billion from 2014, and they came down to $300 billion at the time when it was 2023. So, and I think some of us, or most of us, understand that there has been a lot of discussion on the diversification of oil and gas industry. And when we really look at the outcome of what happened, so post-COVID, the energy demand came back within months. So whatever had been dropped came back within months. And there was a very serious scenario because a lot of companies across the globe thought that it would just like energy, it was just like a bulb, a switch. So you can switch on off and you can do the transition and you can transition from oil and gas to renewable energies. And actually nothing happened. And therefore today the energy demand is back to post-COVID. A lot of plans which were there are washed away like the sand castles. Those waves has washed away those plans. The wind and solar are only contributing to 10% of the energy mix, with 2% as a primary energy mix. Why I'm telling you about all this macroeconomic situation, that when bigger countries and number of things have been discussed about who's holding how much of the storage capacity, when you look at, unfortunately, in Pakistan, we have not looked at the whole macroeconomic situation for, I think, for decades. And therefore, a lot of our reactions are basically based on the, we are reactive. We start looking at it, and then we start to implement what can be done immediately. So there is a very serious crisis going on. I think the book has also mentioned at one point about what happens if the Strait of Hormuz is closed. And we know that there was the debate ongoing in one of the groups about a couple of weeks ago, where people were still discussing, and probably Shariar would recall, the misunderstanding of what is the strategic reserve and what is the commercial reserve. So this is something also alarming, that at a very senior level, there's a discussion ongoing that how you classify the strategic versus your policy reserves. So I think if you come back and just try to converge what I'm saying, there are maybe 2-3 areas which come out. One is certainly the strategy reserve, which I think has been very clearly discussed by the Brigadier Saab, that how they should be done. I think the book provides ample clarification information on how this can be achieved. Obviously, there are big investments which are required, and those are not easily possible. Those have to be looked at, and I think the stakeholders, the ministry, and the other people who matter need to be consulted and convinced that those need to be developed. But it's obviously always a big ask. So I think we should not get carried away when we discuss these things, because a lot of times this discussion held that we should build a refinery and we should do this and do that. I think we should look at it in an objective manner, but this is something I think everybody is doing. Therefore, in fact, there was another thing which I read from the IEA, where they are doing the model of short-term energy security, which is called the MOSES. And this is another model which IEA is looking at it, and perhaps something that IFRI can also look at, so how they develop this model for short-term assessments. So in our case, as far as we are concerned, so there has to be a multi-pronged approach, where we certainly look at building the assets, but we also look at, when we come to energy security, a very high level of exploration, where OGDCL is playing a very active role. I think in the last few years, we have really turned around the organization in terms of number of discoveries, going into areas which are quite difficult. And so our focus will remain on contributing towards the next national exchequer by exploring those frontiers. Another strategy that we have is going into the offshore and drilling into the offshore as well. And then obviously participating and trying to bring more companies from international reputed companies to Pakistan to participate in our joint venture. So I think that's the role that where companies like OGDCL and Madi Energies or PPL, other companies will continue to play. So to really work hard on further exploration and developing those brownfields in Pakistan. Meanwhile, we certainly want to participate in any of those ventures where strategic reserves are built or any other commercial undertaking, work is being undertaken. So I think that's something for the ministry to look at, for the stakeholders to look at, and we'll continue to participate in all those ventures. So I think, just to conclude my remarks, I think when Amna told me about this thing, I had only probably a day or two to look at the whole book. So I looked at, I think from the point that Brigadier Saab mentioned, the storage has been pretty well covered. You identified the risks which are there. I think some of the risks that you just discussed in your presentations, some can be a very, very small risk, like just to have a congestion at the Kimadi port. Some of those things can be easily thrashed out. So I think if the stakeholders can sit down and look at it, maybe the bigger risks are there, but some smaller risks can be very easily cleared out. The risk that you have discussed about the floods, extreme weathers, logistic, I think we have discussed that. We had suffered very badly in 2022 floods when we had to stop a lot of operations, production. So those risks have been very clearly identified. The missed opportunities have already been discussed very clearly. So I think the recommendations which you just mentioned, actually I had gathered the same recommendation in terms of the strategic reserve development, commercial storages. The gas storage has been discussed a lot, but it's a very difficult subject. I think Pakistan, we have looked at gas storages, doesn't really become very viable, and there are very limited opportunities. But this is another area which needs to be revisited, certainly the gas storage part. So I think with that, I would certainly end my comments, and I would like to appreciate IPRI and the PIP and all the stakeholders for taking the time out and highlighting these subjects which are of national interest. And I hope that you will be able to engage the ministry and the policy and the personnel who are engaged in the policy, because that's where we really get the traction out of this thing. So thank you very much, and thank you for your time and listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for your thoughtful remarks and valuable feedback. Now we will open the floor for question and answers. I would request the audience to please introduce yourself and please keep your questions precise so we can accommodate as many questions as possible. You will raise your hand. I will request you to please raise your hand. We will hand over the mic and you introduce yourself and pose your question. Thank you. Mr. Muneeb Shah.
Assalamu alaikum, Muneeb Shah, RA Economic Security. Sir, I just wanted to ask, energy, I think in Pakistan is totally a mess, and whenever you listen about the energy equation, an ample amount of questions come into your mind, but unfortunately you cannot ask all of them. But however, giving the strategic oil reserve scenario, what should be the preference? Some people say that we don't have to utilize more refineries. Some people say that we have to import more oil. Some people say that we have to focus on the borders and Iran and other sources of fuel. So what is your thought? I want to ask Honorable Mr. Shariar Umar Sahib, we should focus on the local sources or we should import more from other countries, and in terms of importing, what should be the preference, the finished products or the crude or the raw forms of the energy? Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay. In terms of priority, there is no question domestic sources must take priority over everything else. Because obviously, from an economic perspective, from a security perspective, that is the best source of energy. Whatever you can produce locally, that has to be given top priority. There have to be increased investments in that, whether it's oil or gas or whatever else you want to do. If you have to import, as we do, it is much better to import crude rather than importing finished products. The reason for that is that you pay an additional margin, which is their refinery margins and other margins and profitability on the finished products, which is petrol and diesel mainly. So it's always better to import crude versus that in terms of a hierarchy of importance. Now, if you do that, then you need refining capacity to transform those into finished products. The problem with most of the Pakistani refineries is that there are old refineries and they have a high degree of furnace oil production as how their slates are structured. So because they produce anywhere from 20 to 30% furnace oil, which now is not really used in Pakistan anymore, there's hardly any power production on furnace oil. There was a time when furnace oil was like 12 or 13 million tons a year furnace oil was used. I think now it's down to 1 million tons or even less than that probably. So furnace oil is gone, but the refineries are still producing it. What that means is that a large part of the product they're producing can't be used. So they are having to export it now, all of that furnace oil, as much of it as they can, at a loss. So below I don't know what the current price levels are, but if you buy a barrel of crude at 70, you can't export that for more than 60 or 65. So they're losing money on every barrel they're exporting of furnace oil versus the crude. So there is a dire need for the refineries to be upgraded and expanded. So if you want to process more crude and produce more finished product, you will have to upgrade the refineries. Do we need a new refinery? Well, we need additional refining capacity. So if that can be gained by first upgrading all of the current ones and expanding their capacity, then certainly that would be the best way to go. At some point, we will probably need another refinery, maybe 5 or 6 or 7 years down the road after all these have been upgraded. Now, even within them, the upgrade possibilities or the expansion possibilities are relatively limited. Atak Refinery, for example, which is here in Pindi, it's not very easy for them to significantly enhance their production because of space limitations and all, and it's in a sensitive area, so they don't have the space. The others, yes, some of them do, and they're working on that. There's, like Brigadier Saab mentioned, there's about a $6 billion upgrade and expansion plan, which was on its way, but it got stuck because of the removal of GST, of sales tax on petroleum products in the previous budget, last year's budget. Because as a result of that, the refineries and the oil marketing companies could not claim the input sales tax, and all of that became a cost for them. I don't have the latest numbers, but I think that's an additional 70 or 75 billion rupees that has accumulated in cost for the OMCs, primarily PSO, and then the refineries as well, that they either have to absorb or the government has to help them to do that. And I think they've currently done it with adding some money in the IFEM. So yes, in terms of priority, it has to be domestic first, then crude, and then finished products, because that would make the most economic sense.
So on the Iranian sources.
Iran, the issue there is we're getting a lot of smuggled diesel from Iran for many years at low cost, and that's caused problems for our refineries and our OMCs as well. Until the sanctions on Iran are lifted, it is not possible for Pakistan to formally engage with Iran and import from there. There's a lot of informal trade, there's LPG, there's diesel, there are other products, tires, lubricants, food products, everything is coming over. But formally we cannot engage with them. There was a project about a pipeline, a gas pipeline, I think set up in 2014. Nothing has happened on that because obviously with Iran sanctions, Pakistan needs the approval of the United States in order to get engaged in that, and that approval is not forthcoming. So, that's up in the air. There's nothing we can do really to formalize that until the political situation changes.
We have a hand raised.
Assalamu alaikum, this is Faris Khan and I am from Zavest. Sir, I have a question that regarding this book launch and the topic we are mentioning. Which idea is better for Pakistan's energy sector? Either establishing commercial and strategic storages or moving towards more and more sustained model to deal with these commercial and storage issues we are discussing. As we know that Pakistan is facing many challenges, and the things we are going to deal, like building storage, strategic and commercial storages, it will be too and highly cost, and we are not in that much state where we can do this thing. So can I have your comments please on this?
If I understand it correctly, you're saying what is the alternative to developing these? Look, liquid fuels are here to stay. Regardless of what you read of, liquid fuels going away, I think the world will continue to develop, to depend on liquid fuels for a long, long time. Certainly in our lifetimes and probably in another lifetime as well. What the actual size of that dependence is debatable, but we will continue to use petrol and diesel and aviation fuel and all. Because some sectors, like aviation, for example, it is right now, there is no economically viable alternative for aviation fuel. So all the aviation, all aeroplanes around the world will continue to run on this fuel for the foreseeable future, because there is no alternative right now which at scale can address that market. For Pakistan, remember that most of this is used for mobility. This is the liquid fuels that we are getting now is used for mobility. It is not used for power generation. Other than some of the LNG we import, which was theoretically used for, brought in for power generation, some of it is being used, some of it is unfortunately being diverted for domestic consumption as well, which is not a very, not very good economics, because you sell it at below cost there and can't recover, and there's huge circular debt as a result of that. So yeah, I think it is we have to develop the commercial story. We don't have an option. I mean, if the state, we talked about the Straits of Hormuz, if they are shut down, realistically, unless there is drastic demand reduction or managed demand reduction in Pakistan by shutting down petrol pumps for 3 days a week or whatever it is, we'll run out of fuel in 15 or 20 days if things continue as they are. So you either have a secured supply chain plus storages, or you manage demand, because there's no there's no other alternative. You either stop using it and put curfews and have restriction on movement. Other than that, you will have to develop storages at some point. And yes, you need to invest the money. It is a lot of money, but in the longer term and the kind of benefits that it can bring, it's a strategic investment. It's not purely about economics.
It seems we have no further questions. No, Ambassador Durrani.
Before it is answered, you talked of cost, and cost is very important. If you go through the study very carefully, there's a portion in which it is given that a study was carried out some time back. Comparison was done vis-a-vis import cost of crude and the infrastructure stat for the storage. And the port cost was $2 billion and the storage cost was $12 billion. But remember that that is a one-time cost. You have to obviously figure out financing modalities. But once it is done, it will underwrite the energy security for a very long time to come. And look what the rest of the world is doing, and they are doing it for a reason. Your neighbor India is doing it. All the neighboring countries, they have a very robust storage infrastructure, or they are planning that way.
Thank you very much. I'm Asif Durrani, ex-Foreign Service. I wondered, Iran-Pakistan gas pipeline, we signed it in 2013, and it's now 12 years. And I don't know whether Iran has invoked that penalty clause which we were supposed to pay. Is there a possibility of including China in the project? Or China is a big importer of Iranian oil. Is there a possibility of transiting that commodity, both oil and gas, through Pakistan? Are there any technical glitches, or is something a political decision has to be made?
So I think obviously the first layer of the first barrier is of course the political situation, where we are not allowed, because of international sanctions, to have any kind of an energy infrastructure investment with Iran. Because that would then probably invite sanctions on Pakistan, which we cannot afford. In terms of China being involved, I think in order to perhaps theoretically bypass the Straits of Hormuz and have their pipelines coming through here, we would of course need to have significant port infrastructure for that, maybe at Gwadar or wherever. So theoretically, yes, that is possible. If only for that purpose, that you bring the pipeline in and load the ships from here rather than from the other side of, within the Gulf. So yeah, theoretically, yes. But will it happen given the current political climate? I don't think any kind of engagement with Iran will be possible until this whole political situation is resolved. So from a security standpoint, yes, it would be ideal. But the other thing, and we have the example, as Amir mentioned, of the Ukraine-Russia conflict, where this massive network of pipelines across Europe flowing in from Russia, I mean, it's all shut down now because of the geopolitical situation. So while it made good economic sense when they were set up, now, because of one incident or an ongoing incident, all of that energy flow has stopped. So for Pakistan to be in that sort of a vulnerable position to depend on a neighbor on the political and geopolitical situation for our energy supplies on just a single, it's sort of risky as well. So it's a difficult situation. I don't think in the short to medium term something's going to happen on that.
From technical point of view, can Iranian oil be transported to China through land?
Across Pakistan, no. It would be, the expense cannot justify that. I mean, it's huge. Because you have to run a pipeline all the way across Pakistan, up through the Punjab, into the Western China, and then from there, it'd be very expensive for them to bring it that way. And the infrastructure cost would be prohibitive. Billions and billions of dollars in that, and then the security issues. So theoretically, it would be cheaper to bring that pipeline to Gwadar and load the ships from Gwadar and set up that infrastructure there, rather than setting up the whole pipeline, because most of China's usage of energy is on their eastern coast. Western China is not that developed, as you know. So they are in the process of developing it, but the energy cannot flow from Pakistan that way. It doesn't make economic sense, right? Not at this point.
Thank you all for your engaging questions, and thank you, sir, for your insightful answers. Now, last but certainly and most definitely not the least, we will hear from our keynote address by Ambassador Inamul Haq. Ambassador Inamul Haq is a distinguished Pakistani career diplomat who has held several key positions, including Foreign Minister of Pakistan, Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, and Foreign Secretary. He currently serves as Chairman Board of Governors at Islamabad Policy Research Institute. I would request Ambassador Inam to please come on the stage. Thank you.
President IPRI, Lieutenant General Majid Ehsan, Mr. Shahryar Umar, CEO of Petroleum Institute of Pakistan, Brigadier Dr. Rashid Wali Janjua, Director IPRI, and Mr. Muhammad Amir Salim, Executive Director, PetroServe, OGDCL, and distinguished participants. This is certainly not a keynote address. These are some concluding remarks that as a layman, I will be making. Let me begin by saying that we have had some very fine presentations by Dr. Janjua, Mr. Shahryar Umar, and Mr. Salim. introducing the study and commenting on it. The study, as you know, has been jointly undertaken by IPRI and PIP, and there has been an interesting question and answer session. We have all been enriched by this discussion. I would like to begin by saying that I, as a layman, have a very limited knowledge about how the energy sector operates in Pakistan and in other countries. And the book, which has been launched today, presents a trove of information on the subject. I received it yesterday afternoon, read through it during the night, and jotted down some comments early in this morning. So much of my comments may well be off the mark. But I have learned much from this book. The subject is extremely complex, with many pitfalls and maybe many shortcomings on our parts also. The study, as you know, deals with the requirements of strategic storage of oil and gas at the government level and also at the commercial level. I will not go into the details of the study, which have already been presented to you, and I will limit myself to one or two basic issues raised in the report and also not raised in the report, which may be extraneous to this report. I have always believed, as a layman again, that most countries, and particularly their armed forces, maintain strategic reserves of oil, which provide the lifeblood of the movement of all three wings of the armed forces. This assumption brought up the question to my mind as to why this study was being conducted in the 8th decade of our independence, and why haven't we thought about developing and constructing strategic storage facilities for more than 70 years. And I found the answer at page 17 of the study, which referred to the Federal War Book of 1983 and the Oil and Gas Regulatory Authority, OGRA's Ordinance of 2002, empowering the federal government, and in particular the Ministry of Energy, for the establishment and maintenance of strategic petroleum storage. And the study notes that in spite of these rules and ordinances, no such facility exists. And by and large, Pakistan does not maintain any strategic reserves of oil or petroleum products at the moment. This is extremely unfortunate. Allow me to say that I find it alarming and disconcerting that such a basic element of national defense and security and such a basic element of commercial interest has been ignored throughout our independent existence. The book is rife with examples of huge quantities of strategic reserves by the more powerful countries of the world in order to ensure that in emergency situations, their forces are not left without the means of rapid movement required during conflict because of the blockade of ports or for any other reasons. I also believe that the argument advanced by the study carried out by the PSO in 2018-2019, which is mentioned on page 49 of the report, to the effect that the cost of buying oil would be $2 billion, while the cost of storage construction would come to about $12 billion, is unconvincing and mixes oranges and apples. First, as Brigadier Janjo has pointed out, the construction would be a one-time cost. Second, how is the country going to defend itself if it has no strategic reserves and its ports are temporarily blocked? And this happened in 1971, incidentally. Karachi was blocked temporarily, and some of the oil which was in Karachi port, in the storage depots, was put to fire. One could see huge flames emerging out of that. So what should an army do in such a case if it does not have strategic reserves? And third, as pointed out in the study also, strategic storages should preferably be subterranean, since above the ground storages can be hit and set aflame. In the case of natural subterranean non-permeable rock formations, oil can be stored as is done in the United States, for example. And as the study recommends, the task to discover and map such formations must urgently be taken in hand. Another question which is extraneous to the study, but somewhat related, is that many a times we hear that some of our own production has been temporarily stopped because we have long-term contracts with foreign countries for the import of oil or gas. How can a commercial organization begin to invest huge sums of money in exploration, prospecting and exploration, if it is not sure that if it finds a well, if it makes a discovery, it will be able to exploit it without interruption? So we have to devise policies which encourage prospecting and exploration and exploitation of homegrown oil and gas, rather than being forced through contracts to purchase oil and close off our own wells of oil and gas. I would also like to make one comment, brief comment, on the contradictory policies that the government of Pakistan pursues in terms of energy. And I will give only one example, and that is the example of solar energy. There is no doubt that renewable energy is the future of energy, but it will take a long time to do so. What we have done is built overcapacity in electricity production in Pakistan already, and we are paying capacity charges to many IPPs, and we have developed a huge debt burden, the circular debt burden that we talk about of petrol and gas. But the government of Punjab is also providing billions of rupees in subsidies for tube wells. Now, once a tube well is solarized, it is not under the government's control. It purchases no electricity from the government, so the government loses income. It has in fact subsidized the solarization of the tube well. And then the farmer is free also to use another commodity which we are extremely short of, which is water, without any accounting. They can turn on those wells for 24 hours because most of our irrigation is done through flood irrigation. And that is why our groundwater resources are shrinking probably most rapidly in the entire world. So when will we stop adopting these contradictory policies and pursue single-mindedly the pursuit of the welfare of the Pakistani people and not vested interests. Let me conclude by saying that I believe that the book being launched today, and particularly its recommendations, should be brought to the attention of the civil and military authorities in order to remove the serious shortcomings in our defense preparedness. And I would suggest that perhaps the President of IPRI should address letters both to the civilian authorities at the highest level and to the defense authorities to start implementing some of its recommendations, if not all. I know that we have fiscal problems, but some fiscal problems have to be overcome in the face of national security threats. And we have to make some sacrifices in some areas to ensure that the nation lives on. Allow me to conclude by offering my commendation and expressing thanks to the IPRI and the PIP teams for their cooperative work in preparing this important and informative study. I thank you all.
Thank you so much, Excellency Ambassador Anam. Now, for the official book launch, I would cause inconvenience to Ambassador Anam once again. I would request you to please join us on stage. President IPRI, Lieutenant General Retired Majid Hassan, Shahriyar Umar, Mr. Amir Salim, for the official unveiling of the book. Lieutenant Brigadier Retired Dr. Rashid Wali Janjua is also joining us. Please. Please present the mementos to our honorable guests. I would also request the industrious researchers and contributors of this research, Amna Ijaz Rafi, Shajil Siddiqui from IPRI's side, and from Petroleum Institute of Pakistan, Muhammad Danish and Adil Rahman. Please give them a huge round of applause for the industrious researchers and the contributors of this research. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the end.